Welcome back, dear listener. In the first part of our journey, we wandered through the foundations of Roman life, its roads, its temples, its bustling markets, and its timeless art. Tonight, we continue deeper into the heart of the empire, exploring the daily rhythms, the quiet spaces, and the enduring echoes that shaped Roman life. In these next 50 facts, we will uncover the softer corners of Rome, the sound of water flowing through aqueducts, the glow of lamps in the night, the laughter in gardens, and the voices carried by letters across distant provinces. Think of this second part as a lantern carried further down a winding path, each step revealing new details, each story inviting you to drift a little further into calm reflection. So, settle in, let your thoughts slow, and join me once again as we journey through the quiet wonders of the Roman Empire. Roman law was one of the most enduring gifts of the empire. It gave shape to daily life, from contracts and citizenship to rights and responsibilities. In public squares, bronze tablets displayed these rules so that no one could claim ignorance. Even emperors were expected to bow to the principle of law, though not always in practice. Reading those codes today feels like hearing the steady heartbeat of Rome, keeping order in a restless world. Bridges carried Rome across rivers and valleys, their arches strong and graceful against the landscape. Each span allowed soldiers, merchants, and families to move without fear of being stopped by nature's barriers. The stones were carefully set, locked into harmony, enduring storms and centuries. Many of these bridges still stand weathered but alive with memory. Walking across one is like stepping back into Rome's ridge, where the empire extended beneath your feet. Markets were the beating heart of a Roman town. Early in the morning, farmers arrived with baskets of olives, figs, and fresh bread. Merchants called out their prices, while the crowd buzzed with haggling voices. Children darted between stalls, chasing each other and begging for sweets. The air was thick with scents meat, roasting wine, spilling herbs dry. In that lively chaos, Rome's empire felt immediate, lived in every transaction. Rome's walls were more than stone. They were a promise of safety. Hadrian's wall stretched across windswept Britain, marking the very edge of the known world. Towers and forts dotted the horizon, fires burning through the night to watch for enemies. Inside the walls, families slept with a sense of calm, knowing soldiers guarded the borders. Even now, the ruins carry the quiet strength of Rome's vigilance. The Mediterranean was Rome's highway, and ships were its carriages. Grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, and spices from Asia crossed the sea in steady rhythm. Harpers ran with the sound of anchors dropping and ropes creaking against wooden docks. sailors sang as they loaded cargo, their voices mingling with the cries of gulls. Without these ships, Rome could not have fed its people or connected its vast dominion. Roman glass brought a new kind of beauty into homes. Windows no longer needed to be shuttered wood. They could glow with softened light through pale panes. Craftsmen blew molten glass into delicate vessels, shimmering with faint blues and greens. At banquets, wine caught the firelight in these cups, sparkling like liquid jewels. Even broken fragments found today still gleam, proof of an art that turned fragility into permanence. Beyond the grand temples, many Romans turned to quieter, sacred faiths. The cult of Mithras met in hidden chambers, where torches flickered and oaths were whispered. The worship of Isis promised comfort and renewal, brought from Egypt to Roman streets. These mystery cults gave hope of salvation, something personal amid the empire's vastness. They remind us that even in an age of power, people sought meaning in silence and shadow. Roman libraries gathered the wisdom of conquered lands, storing scrolls in cool, quiet halls. Scholars unrolled papyrus sheets, their eyes lit by the glow of oil lamps. The air smelled faintly of ink and dust, a perfume of learning. Some libraries were open to the public, offering citizens a chance to glimpse the world beyond Rome. Though fire and time destroyed many, the idea of knowledge preserved still lingers in our own libraries today. Amid the noise of cities, Roman gardens offered a breath of peace. Wealthy families planted laurel and myrtle, roses climbing along marble walls. Statues watched over fountains, where water trickled softly into stone basins. Guests strolled shaded paths, talking of poetry and philosophy. In those gardens, nature was not wild, but carefully shaped into beauty, a mirror of Rome's desire to master the world. Music was everywhere in Rome, though it rarely left behind a record. Flutes and lyres filled villas with gentle melodies at dusk. Drums and horns urged soldiers to march in rhythm on long campaigns. At festivals, choruses of men and women sang beneath open skies, their voices carrying into the night. Children learned simple songs, passing them down through generations. We've walked through Rome's laws, its bridges, and the daily lives of its citizens. Imagine the hum of markets, the flicker of oil lamps in libraries, and the soft music drifting into twilight. Take a breath here. The empire was not only about conquest and stone, but also about gardens, songs, and the quiet rituals of belief. Let us rest for a moment, before continuing deeper into Rome's story. Roman medicine was a mixture of knowledge and faith. Doctors carried small kits with scalpels, herbs, and bandages, tending soldiers and civilians alike. Honey was spread on wounds. Wine was poured to cleanse, and herbs like sage were pressed into poultices. Families prayed to Asclepius in temples when remedies failed. Healing in Rome was both practical and spiritual, a reminder that care is as ancient as suffering. Banquets were displays of taste and power in Rome. Guests reclined on couches while servants brought dish after dish, fish, roasted meats, and exotic fruits. Wine flowed freely, mixed with honey or herbs, filling silver cups. Musicians and poets entertained between courses, while conversation wove the evening together. These gatherings were not only about food, but about connection, laughter, and the weaving of friendships under lamplight. Rome's strength extended across the sea, where its fleets guarded trade and grain supply. Warships with rows of oars glided swiftly, their rams ready to smash into enemy hulls. Naval battles. Echoing across the waters of the Mediterranean. In peace, ports buzzed with merchants and travelers, ships resting like patient beasts. The empire's heart beat as strongly on the sea as on the land. On the tables of Rome's wealthy, extravagance knew no limit. Flamingo tongues, dormice glazed in honey, and imported oysters dazzled guests. These dishes were more about status than hunger, symbols of wealth on display. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens lived on bread, porridge, and vegetables, their meals simple but sustaining. The contrast showed how Rome was both a land of grandeur and inequality. Slavery was woven deeply into Roman life. Slaves labored in fields, taught in schools, and served at banquets. Some gained freedom and even rose to prominence, while others lived and died nameless. Their hands built roads, raised walls, and sustained the city's rhythm. Behind Rome's glory stood countless lives, silent but essential. Though far from power, Roman women shaped the world around them. They managed households, guided children, and sometimes influenced politics through family ties. Wealthy women sponsored buildings or hosted gatherings where poets and philosophers met. Others worked in markets, their voices part of the daily chorus of Rome. Their presence was subtle but enduring, woven into the city's fabric. Latin was the voice of Rome, spoken in courts, schools, and barracks. It carried laws, prayers, and songs across the empire. Over centuries, it transformed into French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Even today, its echoes live in scientific and legal terms. To speak Latin words is to keep Rome's voice alive across time. Romans looked to the skies for guidance in both farming and faith. Farmers planted by the phases of the moon, while generals studied the stars to time campaigns. Eclipses were read as omens, stirring both awe and fear. Though much of their science came from Greece, Romans made it practical for empire and agriculture. In their eyes, heaven and earth were tightly bound. Rome was built not only by emperors, but by countless artisans. Sculptors carved marble faces that still watch us across the centuries. Builders shaped arches and domes that defied storms and earthquakes. Jewelers made delicate rings passed down through families. Their work gave texture to Roman life, turning stone and metal into beauty and memory. Romans valued balance between duty and rest. Afternoons brought visits to baths, where friends met in warm pools. Evenings might mean a play at the theater or a simple walk under the stars. Festivals broke daily routine with feasts, laughter, and music. Even in the empire's busiest days, there was always a search for pause. In leisure, Rome revealed its most human side. We've wandered through Rome's medicine, its language, and the lives of its people. The image of feasts, ships, and starry skies lingers softly in mind. As night deepens, we turn to the next chapter of Rome's story. Letting history guide us gently forward. Rest easy, for there are many more tales to come. As the day ended, bathhouses glowed with lamplight, their pools still warm from the fire-heated floors. Steam rose gently into painted ceilings, blurring mosaics of gods and heroes. A few lingered, whispering in corners, while attendants swept water across the tiles. Outside, the city grew dark, but inside the baths, time seemed to end. For romance, even cleansing the body could feel like a quiet ritual of peace. Along the great roads, inns welcomed weary travelers. Inside, wooden beams held smoke-stained ceilings, and straw mattresses lined the rooms. Merchants counted coins by torchlight, while soldiers dozed with armor nearby. The sound of mules stamping echoed softly in the courtyard. These simple, humble yet safe were tiny islands of rest in the endless sea of empire. Roman sculptors captured faces with astonishing realism, every wrinkle and line preserved in marble. Statues of senators stood in forums, their stern gazes still watching centuries later. Families placed portrait busts of ancestors in their homes, whispering prayers before them. In moonlight, these faces seemed almost alive, silent witnesses to the passage of time. Stone, once shaped by careful hands, became memory itself. Outside city walls, Roman cemeteries lined the roads, filled with stone tombs and simple markers. Families brought flowers, bread, and wine to honor the departed. Epitaphs carved in Latin told stories of lives both long and brief. Children played quietly among the stones while elders murmured prayers. Even in death, Romans remained part of the living world, remembered in ritual and stone. Aqueducts carried water for miles, but they also required constant care. Workers climbed arches to clear debris, repaired cracks, and ensured the steady flow never stopped. At dawn, the sound of rushing water echoed like music across valleys. Without such vigilance, cities would have withered in thirst. These hidden labors kept Rome alive, though their names rarely survived in history. During Saturnalia, roles were reversed. Slaves dined like masters, and laughter filled every street. Houses glittered with garlands, gifts were exchanged, and even gambling was allowed. For a brief time, order gave way to joy, and the empire seemed to breathe freely. Candles burned into the night, casting playful shadows across walls. It was Rome's holiday of freedom, a moment when the world turned upside down in cheer. Every mile of Roman road was marked by stone columns, carved with distances and emperors' names. Travelers leaned against them to rest, reading how far they had come. Carts rattled past, horses stamped, and the road stretched straight into horizon. These markers were both guidance and comfort, proof that every step belonged to a greater journey. Rome measured not just distance, but time itself. Beneath Rome, great sewers like the Cloaca, Maxima carried waste away, keeping the city livable. Workers braved the dark tunnels, guided by torches and the rush of water. Above, fountains sparkled clean because of what was hidden below. The system was ancient, yet astonishingly advanced, a reminder that Rome's greatness was also practical. Even in silence, the underground kept watch over the city. Rome feared fire, and so organized brigades patrolled the streets at night. Watchmen carried buckets, ladders, and hooks, ready to respond. The cry of alarm would bring neighbors rushing, water passing hand to hand. Flames devoured wood, but stone resisted, leaving scars on walls that still stand. Firefighters of Rome. Romance believed dreams could reveal the will of the gods. A strange vision might send someone to the temple for guidance, or to a soothsayer for interpretation. Stories of emperors guided by dreams were whispered across taverns. Even soldiers carried omens in their hearts, trusting feathers, birds, or sudden winds. In the quiet of night, the line between divine and mortal blurred softly. We've wandered through Rome scenes, its bathhouses, and the quiet faith in dreams and omens. Each detail brings us closer to the heartbeat of an empire both powerful and human. Now let us step deeper into its legacy bridges, libraries, and voices that have not fallen silent. Take a breath, for the journey continues. When the first light touched the arches of Roman bridges, their stones glowed like quiet fire. Travelers paused mid-crossing, leaning on railings as the river below whispered. Merchants led carts, priests carried offerings, and children played near the banks. These bridges did more than span rivers. They joined lives, binding faraway lands together. Standing on one felt like standing in the empire's embrace. Libraries in Rome were sanctuaries of silence, where scrolls lined the walls like sleeping voices. Scholars unrolled papyrus with care, tracing words by lamplight. The scent of ink and wax lingered, the perfume of knowledge. Some libraries welcomed the public, offering glimpses into distant lands and forgotten wisdom. In these rooms, the empire preserved more than power, it preserved memory. To be a Roman citizen was to carry rights protected by law. Even in distant provinces, one could appeal to Roman courts. Bronze tablets bore rules of contracts, marriages, and inheritance displayed in public for all to see. The law was Rome's invisible wall, guarding order where soldiers could not. It whispered that every person, rich or poor, stood beneath the same written words. Far from Rome, amphitheaters rose in Gaul, Spain, and Africa, their arches echoing the Colosseum's grandeur. Crowds gathered to cheer gladiators, actors. Dust rose under the sun as games unfolded, binding local towns to the empire's rhythm. At night, silence returned, leaving only moonlight on abandoned seats. Even in ruins, these arenas remember the sound of applause. Aqueducts crossed valleys with arches that seemed to float in the air. Water ran silently above, while farmers and travelers passed beneath in its shade. These structures stood like triumphs of patience, their stones fitted without haste. Rain, wind, and time pressed against them, yet they endured. To walk beneath an aqueduct was to walk beneath Rome's quiet ingenuity. Soldiers on the frontier wrote home on thin wooden tablets. Their words simple and human. Send socks. I am cold. One wrote from Britain, Others asked for news of harvests or for prayers at the family shrine. These voices remind us that legends were not only steel and discipline, but men with aching feet and longing hearts. In their lines, the empire feels suddenly tender. At sunset, Roman roads glowed red with the dust of the day. Carts creaked homeward, and shepherds whistled as flocks moved aside. Mile markers cast long shadows across the stone. Travelers shared bread and stories at roadside inns before sleep. The roads did not end with night. They carried dreams onward. Clay vessels filled Roman homes, jars for oil, bowls for grain, cups for wine. Potters shaped them on wheels, their hands turning earth into utility. Broken shards are still found everywhere, tiny echoes of countless meals. Each piece was humble, yet together they fed an empire. Pottery was the unnoticed rhythm of Roman survival. At night, Roman temples glowed with candles left by worshippers. Smoke rose in thin spirals toward painted ceilings. The marble floors reflected small flames, multiplying their warmth. A hush filled the chamber, broken only by whispered prayers. In that stillness, Romans felt closer to gods who watched unseen. Romans drew maps that stitched the empire together, roads, rivers, and provinces carefully inked. Travelers traced routes with fingers, imagining journeys before they began. Though incomplete, these maps offered a sense of order in a vast world. To hold one was to feel the empire shrink into graspable lines. Rome mapped not only land, but its own dream of unity. As we move beyond the quiet reflections of Roman gardens and the wisdom of their libraries, we now enter the closing stretch of our journey. These final facts bring us closer to the heartbeat of daily Roman life. Their meals, their beliefs, their night skies, and the echoes of their legacy. Think of this last chapter as a gentle twilight where the empire begins to dim, but the stories glow even brighter. The Romans looked up at the same stars we see today, weaving myths and destinies into the constellations. They believed the gods wrote signs into the heavens, guiding fate with twinkling lights. Farmers marked seasons by these skies, while poets found endless inspiration. Imagine standing on a Roman road at night, the Milky Way stretching above, silent and eternal. For them, the night sky was both a map and a mystery. Before electricity, Romans lit their nights with oil lamps and torches. These lamps, made of clay or bronze, burned olive oil and filled rooms with a gentle glow. The flicker of flame softened stone walls, creating shadows that danced across mosaics. Families gathered under this light, telling stories or preparing for rest. Each lamp was a small sun, pushing back the dark. Music filled Roman life, from military marches to quiet evenings at home. Instruments like flutes, lyres, and drums echoed through villas and theaters. Festivals resounded with cymbals and trumpets, while softer tunes accompanied banquets. Music connected the sacred and the ordinary, carrying rhythm into daily moments. Close your eyes, and you might still hear faint notes carried through time. Markets overflowed with fresh bread, olives, fish, and fruits. Vendors called out prices, children weaved through the stalls, and the smell of herbs hung in the air. Exotic goods from distant mixed with simple produce from nearby farms. For Romans, markets were more than commerce. Footwear in Rome was practical yet symbolic. Soldiers wore sturdy sandals called caligae, tough enough to march for miles. Citizens strolled in lighter shoes, while senators displayed status through decorated designs. Each step across stone roads carried both function and meaning. In the dust of those footprints, we glimpse the paths of an empire. Romans wrote with styluses on wax tablets or ink on papyrus. Letters carried across provinces share news, orders, and affection. A simple message could travel hundreds of miles, finding distant friends and families. The scratch of a stylus or the brush of a quill was the sound of connection. Even now, fragments of these writings remain, voices caught in time. Romans loved their gardens, weaving beauty into daily life. Villas often opened onto courtyards, filled with fountains, flowers, and shade. Philosophers strolled under pergolas, while children played among statues. These green havens offered peace from urban noise, and a touch of paradise within stone walls. In gardens, Rome's rhythm slowed, reminding its people of nature's quiet grace. Rings, brooches, and necklaces sparkled in Roman fashion, crafted from gold, silver, and gems. Jewelry carried both beauty and symbolism. Soldiers wore rings as signs of rank, while lovers exchanged tokens of affection. Each piece reflected not only wealth but also personal stories. To wear jewelry was to carry memory upon the skin. Romans lived close to the rhythm of the seasons. Harvest festivals marked autumn. Winter brought warm cloaks and slower days, and summer carried games and travel. They watched the skies for storms and prayed for gentle rains. Life moved with sun, wind, and cloud woven into their calendars. Each season was both a challenge and a gift. Though the empire has fallen, Rome's spirit endures. Its roads, its laws, its language, and its art continue to echo through our world. We live with Roman calendars, speak words shaped by Latin, and walk among ruins that still rise against the sky. To think of Rome is to think of endurance stone that outlasts centuries, and stories that outlast empires. In whispers of marble and memory, Rome still lives, and so we have wandered together through 100 gentle truths of the Roman Empire. From the stones of its roads to the whispers of its gardens, from the roar of the Colosseum to the quiet flicker of oil lamps, Rome has revealed itself not just as an empire of power, but as a world of people walking, speaking, dreaming, and leaving their mark upon time. These stories remind us that even the greatest civilizations are built from countless small moments, a coin passed from hand to hand, a mosaic gleaming beneath bare feet, a prayer spoken in a quiet room. Rome endures not only in marble and ruins, but in memory, in the very rhythm of our days. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself walking those ancient streets under the stars, the air cool and still, the city both distant and near. Let the echoes of Rome carry you gently into rest. Thank you for joining me on this journey. This was Midnight History. Sleep well, dream softly, and good night.